Today, Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach, is about milk. The milk that we're buying from any store with a hechsher. The question in the poskim is how possible that it's kosher. Let's just understand what is the issue here. You have a serious issue in the milk. What is the issue? The issue is the following. When you go to the field where the cows are, where they graze, the amount of trefot that you have in the field is measured at around 20%, could be even much more. But 20% of the meat, in other words, 1 out of 5 for sure, comes out not kosher, and you don't distribute it to the kosher eating people in the stores, right? The consumer, the kosher consumer, would not receive at least a fifth out of all the cows. Why? Because it's treif. What's a trefot? All kind of different trefot they could have. They could have trefot. Most common trefot is in the lungs. You have sirchot that don't make it for any shita. They don't give it to the stores, and you don't eat it. Okay, wonderful. We'll see that according to Sfaradim, it's much worse. Why? Because those that eat Bet Yosef, in order to find a behema kshera, Bet Yosef, which means that the lungs are completely clean, with no sirchot at all. And there's different shiurim of how much is no sirchot at all. We gave shiurim about this in the past. But in order to pass the requirement for Sfaradim as a Bet Yosef, you're talking about single digits, and sometimes it's even the low single digits of animals, which is, let's say, 2, 3 out of 100, you'll find something that you can give and label as Bet Yosef. So now, if you are eating Bet Yosef, you are getting a very small percentage of animals from the field. And even if you're not eating Bet Yosef, you're not makpid on Bet Yosef, we're talking about a fifth. This is the idea that I saw in the Sfarim of Rav Asher Weiss, and this is what I saw in the Sefer of Rav Belsky, Shulchan Alevi, and by Rav Steinbuch, Shlita in Tshuvot V'Anakot Chelekei Siman Resh Mem Hei, he writes over here that it's more than 50% actually. He writes, ידוע הדבר שבפרות זקנות אחוז הטרפות גבוה מאוד, והדבר מצוי שמטריפים מהם יותר מ-50%. The old cows, it's more than 50% that are not kosher. Now you can just imagine that when you go to the field, majority, as he says over here, of the cows are not kosher. But those cows, besides being offered as meat to the public, to the consumer, they also continuously offer milk. They milk those cows, and they ship it to the consumer for drinking milk. Where is the problem? The problem is that the way the production of milk goes is that they put all the milk. It's not like the olden times that you would have one cow in your backyard and you would milk it and bring it to the table. No, today you have hundreds and thousands of cows, and they milk all the cows, and everything is also electronic, and everything is with machinery. So it's not really that the person works much. He just puts the machine, and it milks by itself, and everything goes into a tank of milk. If you ever saw these tanks, they're very big tanks. If anybody's interested to see how it's done, it's very interesting. You go to Amishtown. We've been there many times, and we see how they show you. You can go into the farm itself, and you can go into the place that they show you how the milking process goes. It's very interesting. So they have big tankers, and all the milk of all the cows gets into the tank. After it goes into those big tanks, after they leave it there no more than 24 hours, so it's not going to get spoiled, and then they put it in big trucks, which are like tankers, huge. That's already, each one like this loads many of those tanks that were on the field, and they put everything there, and they ship it. They take it now to the place to process it. You process it in different ways. You have to pasteurize it, you have to put some enzymes, you have to put some ingredients, you have to put some vitamins, crucial vitamins that people are missing, they add over there. And that's the way it's done. It's getting ready, pasteurized, and shipped to the stores in bottles. Good. The question is, how do you get a Kosher on such milk that comes from cows that has a very large percentage of trefot? You have, let's say 20% trefot on the field that you couldn't eat once they shechted. That cows goes to the goyim. It doesn't go to the Jewish consumer. So how is it possible that the meat you don't eat and the milk you do? It's a contradiction. How do you do that?
You know which trefot you eat or you don't eat? Before you shecht them, right now they're walking cows. You say there's 20%. You don't know who they are.
Right. So you don't know who they are. So that's called ruba de leita kaman. You don't know. You can't pinpoint them. But there is two ruba in the Torah. Ruba de ita kaman and ruba de leita kaman. And there's nafka minut in it. Ruba de leita kaman is a little bit weaker. But in the end of the day, there is rov over here. Rov the leita kaman. Good. But over here we're talking about 20%, which is a miut. But 20% is not enough. I know that once I shecht 5 behemoth, one of them is not going to be kosher.
Well, once you start to shecht it, but you don't want it when it's living.
So let's see. So now you don't have bitul in shishim. What's bitul in shishim? It's less than 2%. Over here you have 20%. 20% of chalav that comes from the trefot. Now just to explain, the Gemara in Bechorot Daf Hey says ve'eta gamal twice. Why the Torah says ve'eta gamal twice? One is to be oser the gamal itself, and one is oser anything that comes out from the gamal. And same thing from any animal that is not kosher or became treif. You have a cow that became treif. The isur ve'eta gamal goes on that as well, that anything that comes out of it is not permitted, just like the trefa itself. There's isur. If that is the case, you have a very big question. How could you drink that milk? It's not batel. You have over here tankers they put into your milk. It's not batel. It needs to be batel b'shishim in order to be able to. It's lach belach. Lach belach, we need bitul b'shishim. That's how it says in the beginning of Hilchot Ta'arovot. You have isur of trefa that fell into milk. You have to have shishim. You don't have shishim.
If I milk a cow and I slaughter it right after and it's found terefa, you're going to tell me the milk is not kosher?
The milk is not kosher until 3 days. If you shecht it 3 days afterwards, then we say that now it became treif. That's a different question. We're just asking that in statistics,
immediately it's not kosher.
Not kosher. Within 3 days, it's not kosher. But after 3 days, we said there's a chazakah. But we are asking right now statistically. It just doesn't work out. Statistically, it doesn't make sense. How is it possible that if I know for years and years and years that 20% will go to not kosher consumer because it's treif, 100% we're not going to eat it. How can you drink the milk? Simple question that the poskim want to know. It's a bomb question that we need to deal with. Some say, menachinami, right? Of a shechter. He says you can't drink it. No, also, you can't drink it. It's not like it used to be in previous times. Today, behemoth are much more, much easier become trefot. They're much more.
But trefa are not supposed to last for more than 12 months. So according to this, 20% of the cows should just die every 12 months. 20% of the earth should die. The fact that they don't die, that's the fact that maybe we're machmir, but we don't. לא עושים את זה.
כן, אז יש בזה דיון גדול. There's a big discussion on what you're asking, and you're asking a very good question. You're asking a very good question. There is a big discussion. Okay. There is a big discussion on what you're saying in the poskim, and we're going to see later on in the shiur that the trefot that we are dealing with today, they're not necessarily vadai trefa, the safek trefot, the chumrot that we took upon ourselves. That is a certain approach that we see in the poskim. And achinami, that's an approach to answer and resolve that problem. We'll see. We'll get to it. But you're asking a very good question, but your question is not going to be so helpful because you're saying a good question. You're saying if that's trefa, it should die. Why 20% of animals don't die? That's a question on the statistics that we said, which is a very good question. But on the other hand, if Chazal said that this is trefa, So the Rashba was asked such a question. In the Shuta Rashba, he brings down that somebody asked him that there's a certain animal, Chazal said, טרפה לא חיה. וזאת החיה, חיה אכול, שלא חיה לא תאכל. That's the Gemara. טרפה אינה חיה. The Rashba was asked about, from somebody, he said that there was a טרפה, we saw that it was nitraf, and it lived more than 12 months. That was he was asked. Very good question, no? I would say it's a beautiful question. I would kiss the person that asked such a question, and I would break my head to try to figure out an answer. Maybe it's rov. Maybe when Chazal spoke, they spoke about rov. Maybe they spoke on the very, there's always yotzeh, there's always anomaly, there's always yotzeh min hadofen, there's always something that doesn't fall into the klal. Okay, I would come up with different answers. The Rashba, on the other hand, goes to town. You are a kofer. If you speak that way, you go against what Chazal says. Mamash like knocks him down. Mamash like some places in yeshivas do to some places, some people that they don't like they kill them, like they shech the animal in the slaughterhouse. Mamash without any boundaries. That was the Rashba. Not everybody agrees with that, such a mahalach. Take a look at the Yam Shel Shlomo, he has a different approach. But I don't want to go into the halachot of trefot right now. I want to deal specifically in this, but your question is a beautiful question. It could be that the trefot, many of the trefot are actually, they fix them, they give them surgeries, they fix them up. The question is, the Gemara says that once an animal becomes taref, it's eina chozeret le'echshera. So is it possible to fix a trefa? Many poskim say no. You give a surgery to a trefa. It had a certain hole in a place that makes it trefa. Can you do a surgery and fix it? So many poskim say no, because the Gemara says it becomes trefa. That's it. But Rabelsky has a beautiful tshuva. He works out all the questions, and he says that you could be machshir a trefa like that went through fixing through the remedy of the
Education also?
Whatever helps. If he just says, you see that it lives 12 months afterwards, so you see that it's not trefa. Oh, יצא מדין trefa. Okay, but there's big discussions and there's a lot what to speak, but that's a shiur on ilchot trefot, not for what we're talking about right now. Right now we're asking, how could you be machshir that milk? Yes. Yes.
We learned trefa for gamal as well.
We learned that whenever an animal is asur, the milk also, its milk or anything, the kollel yotzeh min hatameh, tameh. Anything that comes out of it, that's what we learn from there.
Trefa is not tameh. Gamal is.
Still, Chazal learned that all the things that you're not allowed to have anything that comes out of it.
We're not going to say that through the shechita that the fire happens, maybe the fear of shechita. That's also,
The what?
I'm saying it's possible to say that maybe through the fear of the shechita.
No. The strefot that were there, sirchot in the reot were there the whole time. They weren't created in the time of the shechita. Animal that ate all kind of nails, and you find it in. Okay, we don't have much time. Let me run through the sugya. So over here, Rav Asher Weiss comes down with a beautiful chidush, mamash beautiful chidush. But in order to say such a chidush, you have to be Rav Asher Weiss. And he says that in Torah, you don't go after statistics, you go after rov, which means if you find a piece of meat in place that in a town that has 9 kosher stores and 1 not kosher, the Gemara says, "Kol deparish meruba parish," you can eat it. It's from the rov. You can eat that piece of meat. Good. You go batal rov. Says Rav Asher Weiss, what if you find 10 pieces of meat in the street? Would you say, since statistics are that 1 came from the non-kosher store, you're not allowed to eat at least 1 piece? Or do you say that all are kosher? He says it doesn't make a difference how many pieces of meat you find in the street, even 200, and the statistics are that the large amount of them, 10% is taref. We don't go in Torah after statistics, we go after rov. Zil bata ruba, mina milda damu rabanan zil bata ruba. And therefore, the rov is kasher, you go after the majority. Or same thing over here. What is the rov? We don't look at statistics, we look at rov. What is the rov over here? The rov is that majority of the animals are kosher, the milk is kosher. That's what he says. A beautiful chidush, unbelievable chidush. It's like a gishmak chidush also. Like it makes you like it fits. It makes you feel good when you hear such a chidush. So obviously that you can ask a lot of questions on this chidush. He himself was asked in the next tshuva that he brings in Chelek Aleph. He brings this down in his Sefer Minchat Asher in Siman Lamed Tet. So on the next Siman, he was asked by a rabbi that he himself contradicts himself because he says that if a person a Kohen walks into a house or into a hospital, that there's likelihood that there's a chole over there, a dead person over there. He's not allowed to be metameh lametim. So he says it's not allowed to go in there. By the way, it's a machloket. Rav Moshe in Gerot Moshe allows a Kohen to walk into a hospital, even though there's likelihood that, because the majority of those that die, it's a chidush, are not Yidden. So therefore, the tumah is only for Yidden. So therefore, he says that you go after batar majority. But in Badei Shulchan and Avelut, he doesn't understand what's the difference. It's not you go over here batar of. If there's one person that's dead, that's a Yid, that's enough. It's not like you have 10 people that are dead, so 9 you go batar of. It's either yes or no. It's safek. You should not be allowed. Anyway.
But the milk is parish and but the hospital is not parish. It's kavua.
So I don't want to go. He brings over there 3 answers not like you. He brings 3 answers over there not like you to try to resolve his problem. Is contradiction. This chidush, although it's very gishmak, it's mind-boggling because there's 20% of milk that's not kosher. Do me a favor. There's 20% of I'm drinking right now. Not kosher milk, 20%. So Belsky writes in his Sefer Shulchan Alevi, he writes, if anybody says what I just said, that you might be drinking not kosher, he's a kofer. He mamash like goes, he kofer. He calls him a kofer. Belsky was like Belsky was a heavy duty. Like you can see through his Sefer. He didn't leave anybody. It's nishta here and nishta here. You either it's a dik. There's nothing in the middle. Either it's a dik or a rasha. So over here, he writes simple. Belsky writes simple. You go after Chazal told you to go after chazakah. The animal is kosher. You don't know that the animal is not kosher. 20%. You have already an experience. You have already a history of shechting animals already for 500 years. That 20% are not kosher. It doesn't make a difference. What Chazal said? Chazal said you follow batar chazaka. Minamil dadam urabanan dazninan batar chazaka. Right? They said that the animal you can drink its milk. Why? You can drink milk. It says Siman Pei Aleph. Why? Sif Bet. Why? Chazaka? I don't know. If you shecht and you found that it was treif, 3 days afterwards, you rely on chazaka.
What's chazaka? Which chazaka?
You have an animal. It was born kosher. Along the way, maybe it became treif, right? You don't know. You know that it's treif. If you know that it's treif, you're not allowed to drink the milk. But right now, you don't know. It's a safek. Maybe yes, maybe no. So you have chazakah. Yeah, you have chazakah that it's kosher.
Walking, it looks healthy. No, that's not a chazakah. That's a
Well, it could be that if it doesn't, it's reuta. Could be, but I'm saying, but
if I can walk, there's all this mesukenet.
right, he was born kosher.
Right, yeah.
Okay, very good. So he says he's mamash, like, it's simple that you have to have chazakah. There's no question even. He says like there's no question. So those that are machmir, the what? Torah. The Isur Torah. Those that are machmir, mamash like says it's kfira. We found such an idea that those that are machmir could be kofer. The Marshal brings down a few times in the beginning of Basar B'Chalav that a person that's machmir on things that you shouldn't be machmir or to keep more than 6 hours. Only Maharam that had a michshol was able, but nobody else. Otherwise, it's kfira. We found such a thing by in Kuftet Zayin now that we're learning that in the Sha'arei Tshuva brings down over there in the Pitchei Tshuva that if a person wants to be machmir by more than 60, you have a piece of isur that fell into your soup. You had a piece of chazir, a drop. A goy passed by with with chazir, with bacon, and a small piece fell into your soup. And it got dissolved. And everything's mixed. And you have over here 200 against that. 500 against that, you can tell. It was a small piece. You had a big soup for the whole family and all the guests. Would you drink it or you don't drink it? You give the soup or you don't give the soup? מה הרב אומר?
אם זה טעים. מעלמים עין.
So he brings down the machloket over there.
מה העיקר?
But those that are machmir, they're saying it's asur to be those that are mekel, they're saying it's asur to be machmir. Chazal told you it's batel b'shishim. The Torah told you it's batel b'shishim. What are you, more religious than the Torah? Is that possible? It's not possible. So therefore it's asur. Says that.
Therefore it's mutar.
I'm sorry?
Therefore it's mutar.
It's mutar. So there's an idea that maybe you're not allowed to be machmir. It's asur to be machmir.
זה לא קדש, זה קדש.
יש רוחץ עוד מעט.
says תשובות והנהגות. says תשובות והנהגות a חידוש נפלא. He himself doesn't have a source for it, but he says a חידוש נפלא. He says like this. What?
מה מותרת עכשיו?
אנחנו חוזרים לשאלה, we're going back to the question, how could you drink that milk? 20%. He holds 50%.
מה מיעוט המצוי, הריבה של משקלות יעקב?
אני לא נכנס לזה עכשיו, זה הרבה יותר ממיעוט המצוי.
זה סטטיסטיקה.
זה הרבה יותר ממיעוט המצוי. חוץ מהריבה שאומר שזה, הוא לא אומר 40%, הוא אומר קרוב לרוב.
כחצי, 40.
קרוב למחצה. כן, אבל בכל אופן, קרוב למחצה הזה, אוקיי, we spoke about this a lot, קרוב למחצה, do we פוסק like the ריבש? בפשטות not, but חכם עובדיה took that להלכה, and also, I saw in the ספר תולעת שני, הרב רווח, he also says that Rav Shlomo Zalman is posek like the Rivash because he says that one should be machmir like the Mishkanot Yaakov that it's 10%, which means should be machmir, it's not Mikar Adin. In other words, Mikar Adin is like the Rivash.
למה הוא אומר שלא הולכים לפי סטטיסטיקה כשיש לנו את הריבש ואת המשקלות יעקב שכן דיברו בסטטיסטיקה?
לא, סטטיסטיקה לגבי בדיקה. The question is, should you check? No. If you can check, he would agree. If you could have checked this milk and separate it, for sure, the din would be that it's miut hamatzui and you have to separate it. No question about it. את החלב הלא כשר. If you were able to separate the milk, if there would be a way, like the Rama brings down in הלכות תערובות, if he's able to, החלב, if you're able to cool it down and the חלב will come up, you have to do that. The question is when you can't do that, like in the milk, it got dissolved, it got mixed in. It's a regular milk, it's cow milk, it's just from a tefa, but it's the same milk. It gets mixed, you can't separate it even in a lab. So therefore, the question is it mutar or asur? That's the chidushim. Comes Rav Steinbuch in Tshuvot V'Hanagot and says a different thing. He says an idea like this. There's a difference between eating meat and drinking milk. What is it? Eating meat, that's treif. It's a איסור תורה. בשר בשדה טרפה לא תאכלו. איסור תורה, לאו תאורייתא, you're not allowed to eat. So therefore, we are מחמיר on such things. Of course, it's not going to be batel in any way. But when we're dealing with milk that comes out of it, that you don't learn from elav, it's a איסור עשה. Not a עשה, not it's עשה, בקום עשה. It's not like a מצוות עשה that sit in a sukkah, wear tefillin, wear talit. It's a isur aseh. You're not allowed to drink that milk. Isur aseh. Where we said, ואת הגמל.
זה לא עשה, איפה עשה?
אז זה, יש...
אסור לאכול ולשתות את זה של הגמל. לא תאכלו בגמל. זה לאו.
אבל פה יש, אבל לומדים את זה, כן, לומדים את זה מהסייד. בואו נקרא את זה בפנים, הוא אומר ככה, אם כן יש לומר, כל מה שאנו מחמירים הוא רק באכילת הבשר עצמו, שהוא באיסור לאו דטרפה, אבל לא ביוצא מהטמא, שאינו לאיסור עשה. עכשיו הוא אומר, he puts in parentheses, דבר זה צריך ביור שלעצמו, שהרי איסור עשה, בקום ועשה לשתות, לא מצינו להקל בו. In other words, he says זה חידוש נפלא, and he doesn't have a source for it, and therefore it's... Let's go on. He says a second answer, which Chacham Ovadia also touch upon, a little bit a different angle, but the same idea, and we need to know. He says what you presented before, and that is that most of the animals, most of the trefot are not really trefot mideoraita. Mideoraita, we have 18 trefot, we have a certain amount, 70 that the Rambam points out, there's a certain trefot. But then the minagim and the rabbis of the generations added a lot of more chumrot on top of those trefot, all kind of things, either because we're not beki to know which one is taref, which one is not, so the machmir, or for different reasons, all kind of chumrot, they build up many chumrot on the trefot, and because of that, we're saying the following, according to Rav Steinbuch. You know what, before we see Rav Steinbuch, what Chacham Ovadia says? Chacham Ovadia brings the Pri Chadash. The Pri Chadash himself deals with such a question. He says that if an animal, you're not allowed to eat if it's treif, and if you know, as we're saying, that there's a certain amount of animals that are treif, you're not allowed to eat just like that. But if it's, if let's say, that part of the animal, let's say it's the lung, got lost, you're allowed to eat that animal. How are you allowed to eat that animal? The answer is that since the whole idea, says the Pri Chadash, is that it's chumrot, it's not mikar adin, it's not mideoraita, it's not even the Rabbanan, it's chumrot of later generations. So therefore, chumrot you only machmir when you have it in front of you. Something that got already mixed in, or something that got lost, the lung that got lost, you don't have to be machmir. Same idea says Chacham Ovadia, and brings other poskim as well, that brings that very idea. And that is here, Yabia Omer, Siman, Yored De'ah, in Chelek Yud, Siman Urchet. He brings the same idea from him and from Kiseh Eliyahu, that by milk as well, as long as you have the meat, you have a problem. You have to check it out. You have to make sure that it's kosher because you want to eat that milk. But what if when you're dealing with the milk itself? The milk, you can't check. How are you going to check? The milk came into a big container, as we explained before. Everything gets mixed in. You want to eat that milk. You want to drink that milk. You can't check it. Because of that, we're not taking those chumrot that were collected within generations. This is what also Rav Steinbuch says with a little bit of a different idea. He says that everything is chumrot. Min Torah, lach belach is batel, if there's no noten tam. Right? The halacha is like this. When you have lach belach, two things that are liquidy, they got mixed. A little bit treif, a lot of kosher. Doesn't need to be a lot. More kosher than treif. So what's the shiur min Torah? Rov. You have majority of kosher liquid, you're allowed to drink the whole thing. Chachamim restricted and said that you need to have 60. That if you don't have, you can't taste the isur. If you can taste the isur, then for sure you need 60 until you don't have noten tam. But if you have no noten tam, because it's the same thing as our case, milk from kosher and milk that's not kosher got mixed together. If you have majority, min Torah, it's enough. Chachamim restricted that you need to have 60. Says Rav Steinbuch, when did they restrict to have 60? When you have something that's vadai isur, mikar adin. Over here, it's not mikar adin. What's the din over here? It's a chumrot. On chumrot, you machmir when you know it's asur. But when you don't know it's asur, when it got mixed in, you go with mikar adin and of the Torah, or midrabanan, mikar adin halacha. And therefore, you can permit such a thing. Same idea we found, for instance, it's not exactly the same, but we found such a thing in chalav akum. Chalav akum that got mixed. How much would it be batel? In order for it to be mevatel chalav akum, how much do you need to be mevatel isur? The Ramban says that by chalav akum you need rov. You don't need 60. Why? It's isur she'en lo makor min Torah. It's not based in the Torah, this isur of chalav akum. Not so pashut. The Shach says not so. The Shach says that chalav akum is asur mishum gzera mishum chalav tameh that was mixed into the chalav. So there, or maybe the whole chalav is not kosher. Because of that, he considers it safek. Whenever the safek, says the Shach in the Chot Sfek Sfeka, that it's not considered a safek the Rabbanan, it's considered like a safek deoraita because it's based on safek deoraita. But says the Ramban, en lo makor min Torah. It's not based on the Torah. The Rashba, on the other hand, this was the Ramban. The Rashba on on Torat Habayit, argues on this idea. He says that you need to have 60. But you see, same idea over here with that. Now, when we're dealing with milk, so you have much more issues for the milk that comes to your table. Even if we say now that we said from Obelsky, from Chacham Ovadia, from the Minchat Asher, Rav Asher Weiss, from the Tshuvot Ve'anagot. Tshuvot Ve'anagot is like, he doesn't have a solution that makes it. On the other hand, he says even more so. He says that הרי אחוז גבוה מהן הוא טרפה בוודאי, והרי אנו דורשים תמיד שבכל דבר יהיה הכשר מעולה. Normally, what do we eat? We eat things that have to have excellent הכשר. We don't compromise on הכשרים. If something is not 100%, we stay away from. So over here, ולא סומכים, we never rely, לא סומכים על היתר של רוב וכל בפריש. We don't rely on those things. וסוף כל סוף מאכל אסורות מטמטמים את הלב. It has an effect on you. ומדוע כאן לא שמענו שמחמירים בזה? So by the way, טמטום הלב, we have a מחלוקת in the poskim, if טמטום הלב is a מציאות, which means whenever you eat something that's אסור, it causes you טמטום הלב, it causes you a clog to the heart. Clog means not a physical clog, it's spiritual clog. כן, אבל what's the idea? Is it מציאות? You ate something even, let's say, without knowing. You are getting the טמטום הלב, or only the halacha. When you violate the halacha, or you violate the din Torah, it causes nafkamina. For example, there's a lot of nafkamina. But I'll give you an example. A person that has to eat because of pikuach nefesh. He's in the desert, he didn't eat for a few days. He's going to die, and all he has in front of him is an animal that he doesn't have sekin shchita. He can just rip a part of the animal and eat it. Should he eat it? Of course. כל התורה כולה נדחית מפני פיקוח נפש. Of course you should eat it. Now, does he have טמטום הלב? He's going to go back home afterwards and go to Bet Midrash. Would he be able to learn Torah the same way that he did before? It's מחלוקת. The Maharal, Miprag, says that it doesn't affect you because it's the איסור that affects, not the עבירות. לא הרוד ממית, אלא החטא ממית. That's the idea. Don't be mixed with all kind of different things. If you didn't violate the איסור, you did a mitzvah. Of השבת הנפש. So he asks over here, but there's also טמטום. But if we're saying that it's מותר מעיקר הדין, Obelsky says, be careful, דיר באלק, if you're going to be מחמיר, you're כופר. So now, if I don't want to be מחמיר because I want to listen to Obelsky, so I'm going to get טמטום הלב. It's not מסתבר, right? So you have to know how you're going with this. But besides those isurim, there's a lot of problems in the animals that needs to be dealt with, that we wrote over here for one that wants to see. For instance, the kashrut. Why do we need kashrut for milk? What could be wrong in the milk? So we said already before that it's produced together with all kind of things that they add to it, ingredients, and they add to it vitamins, the very, very, very needed vitamins and other things that a person needs for his drinking consumption. We say it's over here. Lactose, vitamins D for calcium, and vitamin A for low-fat milk that you don't get in the low-fat milk. So they add that. Those things need hechsher. They're not always kosher. So you need to know that it comes from a kosher place. Also, even if you get everything kosher, but it could be that they process it in machines that beforehand they put over there things that are not kosher. So you need to make sure that it's kosher. Besides all those problems, also you have the big discussion of the cows that they make on them surgeries today, because the cows, since they want a lot of production of milk, they don't give them to gaze in the field and eat grass, but rather what do they give them? They give them processed food, all kind of things. So that way they make much more milk. When you have such things, it causes them to have a lot of gases, and those gases causes the stomach to go out of place. It's dislocated. Now this causes also a lot of gases that the animals becomes very sick. Many of them even die. Because of that, what they do is they make a surgery in the animal. They cut the keres, the אור החופה את רוב החופה את רוב הכרס, which makes it טרפה, and they let out the gas. They put the stomach in the right place, and they sew it. Then they put also many times a tube going into the stomach that the farmer can just open up whenever he sees that the animal has a lot of gas. What happens is it makes the animal trefa. How could you eat that animal? How could you drink that milk? So Belsky has a tshuva, he permits it, he says it's permitted, he works this thing out. But lemaise, many poskim say it's mamash trefa. The mile of drinking Chalav Israel is that Chalav Israel means that there's mashgichim in the field that actually make sure it's all categorized, which cow went through a surgery, which cow didn't go through a surgery. So you're gaining not only Chalav Israel, but you're gaining also to know for sure that you're not drinking Safek Chalav Taref. And we're relying on, if you want to rely on Persky, that's very nice. But many poskim are machmir. You buy Chalav Israel, you are saving yourself all those issues. Chazak v'ruch.